let's go over what we did yesterday. So we mentioned yesterday that the story of Chana teaches us many laws about prayer. And the term the Gemara uses is how many important halachas, hilchasa gibor vasa, many important halachas that can be learned from the verses of Chana. It says she was speaking on her heart. So we learn from there that you have to have kavanas halev. You have to think, you have to feel in your heart, have the right kavana, concentrate. The lips, it says only her lips moved. From here we see that a person should articulate with their lips. Her voice was not heard. From here we see you're not allowed to lift your voice in tefillah, in prayer. And this we mentioned that it also, we learned this a while back about the issue of davening out loud, that it looks like you think Hashem doesn't hear you, and so on. There were a few things that it mentioned there in that Gemara. And here, the truth is, there are three versions of the way this is brought down among the Rishonim, among the commentaries. And it's interesting because one of the versions says this teaches us that you have to pray quietly. Here it says that it's very subtle differences, but what you see from the differences of the way this is brought down is what is the most important part, what is the most important aspect of tefillah, of prayer. If it's requesting your needs, if that is the most important part, to ask God for what you need, then it would seem that speech is a major part of the prayer. Because just like you would ask a king or ask someone for what you want, someone that can give you what you need, so the same thing would apply to prayer. It needs to be done with speech. However, if prayer, the most important aspect of prayer is your kavanas halev, is your avodah shebalev, is the serving God. If that's the most important aspect of prayer, it means you're serving Hashem, you're feeling close to Hashem, your connection, you're connecting to Hashem, and it's not about requesting your needs. So according to that, the most important element of prayer, it's all about your feeling, your emotional attachment to Hashem. And if so speech is not really the most important element of prayer. And prayer is really, it's really a feeling. It's really the most important part of it is the attachment to Hashem. And according to that, we understand from Chana, from here, not that it's prohibited to say your prayer out loud, but that you have to pray quietly because it's all about your intent. In fact, if you say things out loud, it could ruin your ability to concentrate and think about Hashem. So the depending on the way it's worded, that is a hint. That shows us the different ways of understanding prayer. Now, even if you say the most important part of prayer is speech, there are still two ways of understanding it. Either speech that has to be either when you speak to a king, you don't scream, but you say it pleasantly and quietly. You speak to a king in a pleasant tone. So the same thing would apply to prayer, that when you're speaking to Hashem, you say it in a soft tone. Another way of looking at it is no, speech. The speech of prayer is speech. The reason why you don't scream it is because it looks like you don't believe. It looks like you don't believe that Hashem hears you. So there are two understandings of the reason why not to say your prayer out loud, and it's all based on what is the ikr, what is the main element of prayer. Of course, we all agree that you need to request what you need from Hashem, and you need to serve Hashem. Everyone agrees that both are correct. But what is the major part of prayer, and what is more on the side? What is more of a secondary aspect of prayer? See, we got a lot of questions here. Yes, Robert.
And when I go to shul, and on occasion, there's somebody who's davening, and it's loud, it's drawing attention, or it is distracting to people, and it's almost as if praying out loud is vanity, to essentially say, "See, God, I'm praying to you," to everybody else's disadvantage. So I always have a problem with that, with somebody who thinks that they're so quote unquote holy, but to me, it's vanity. Do you have any comment about that, Rabbi?
So this is the thing. It does say that when a person says things out loud, it leads them to it helps their kavana, their concentration. Now, what exactly that means is not so simple. Most people think it means that when you say things out loud, you concentrate better while you're saying it. But really what it means is you get into it, and then afterwards, you're able to concentrate, meaning that really after you say it out loud and you got yourself into it, you're really supposed to say things quietly. So quietly is the preferred method. But it does say that saying things out loud does help you get into that mode. The only thing is that if it's interfering, causing others to not be able to concentrate, that's a big problem. Right. Our discussion is really talking about the Shemona Esrei. The Shemona Esrei prayer is not a prayer that anyone says out loud, except the Chazan when he repeats it, except the Shliach Tzibur, the cantor, when he repeats the Shemona Esrei, he says it out loud. So with regard to the Shemona Esrei, I don't think any shul has it. I don't think anyone says it out loud in any shul. The thing that you're wondering about is the rest of the prayer. So the rest of the prayer, we don't really have this law that we're learning is really the Shemona Esrei. You're standing before Hashem. You're supposed to imagine that you're standing right before Hashem. So it has special rules, the Shemona Esrei prayer itself. It's different than the Shema. Shema, you're accepting God's sovereignty, but you don't have to feel that you're standing right before. It's not like you're standing in the king's chamber. Of course, everywhere we're in front of Hashem. But the Shemona Esrei specifically has that element to it. So because of that, it doesn't have the same rules, the rest of the davening. But if you're davening in a shul, you have to make sure that you're not interrupting and ruining other people's concentration. So I would say that person should daven in a shul that everyone davens out loud. That would be my suggestion. There are shuls that the whole congregation davens out loud. And then there are shuls, I think Sephardic have a custom that they all say it together. They say a lot of the prayer. That might be a good shul for this guy. An invitation to the other shul. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I didn't understand Pasuk Chavdalet when it says, Mikan lamitpalel shiachtoch bisfatav. What is shiachtoch bisfatav? To cut by his lips.
Yeah, what it means is that you can't read with your eyes. You have to actually say the words with your lips. And you should actually.
But that's why they said to move your lips.
Move your lips.
But yachtoch, I don't understand. That's.
Yachtoch.
I thought it was something else.
Well, I'll tell you why. There's a way of moving your lips that you don't say the words properly, but you move it, so it's good. You're thinking something, you move your lips, but you're not doing it exact. Yachtoch bisfasav means you do it exact.
You stop at the end of every word.
Yeah, I said the word articulate. I don't know if that's correct. Yeah. I think that's the correct meaning of the word articulate, means that you actually say you say it, correctly, properly.
That's true, yeah.
Okay. So
no mumbling.
Right. Right. Okay, that would be a good the way to answer your question, Ben. Thank you, Susan. So then it says that Eli thought that she was shikr. Eli thought that she was drunk. From here, we see that a shikr is usher to daven. Someone who's drunk is not allowed to daven. The Shulchan Aruch does talk about two types of drunkenness. There is a shikr kiloit, drunk like light, and there is, and I think that the source of shikr kiloit is from this week's parsha. That light drank, they got him so drunk that his daughters were able to convince him to have relations. And that's because he was so shikr, he was so drunk. But that is one level of drunkenness that definitely prohibited to daven with. And well, I guess we could look it up in Shulchan Aruch. It's chapter 104 in the Shulchan Aruch.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you say that Lot was convinced by his daughters to have relations.
Right.
I question that.
Uh-huh.
And the
Okay.
reason why I question that is his reaction before Sodom was destroyed, when the townspeople came to come and get the angels, and the fact that he was willing to give his daughters.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think he was. I don't think he needed very much convincing.
Uh-huh.
I think the fact is that he was drunk, and just it happened. And
Well, they did cause him to drink, before before he had relations with them. So the Gemara uses that story, as a term. Anyway, let me tell you what it says in Shulchan Aruch. It says a person who drank wine, the size of a revius, should not daven until his wine is removed. If he drank more than that, if he could speak before a king, then his prayer is considered a prayer if he davened. But if he can't speak before a king, his prayer is considered a toyev, an abomination. And he has to go back and daven again when the wine goes away from him. Now, if he did daven when he shouldn't have, or if he didn't daven, either way, if he didn't daven and he missed the prayer, he could daven the next prayer afterwards.
Rabbi, is that a sin to daven when you're drunk and then you have to redo? Don't you have to do another prayer to say you're sorry to Hashem on top of doing a davening?
Again, no. That you could do your confession or whatever. But the question is, if your prayer itself is acceptable, and there are scenarios where it's accepted, and there are scenarios where it's not. Again, we're talking about Shemona Esrei, and depends on how drunk you are. If you could speak before a king, then it's fine. If you wouldn't be able to speak before a king, then your prayer is an abomination. And obviously, it's better not to daven ever before when a person is drunk. Now,
finish cooking the rest of food. She didn't do all it. I did part of it too.
okay. So it does mention here that a person can figure out if they're fit or not. Our wines are not as strong as in the olden days, and therefore, even if a person drank a revius, which is 3 ounces or 3.5 ounces, you could still daven. For sure, if you're using a prayer book, we're not so worried of a small amount of shikros, of a small amount of a person drank a small amount. Okay, so that's the laws of drinking, of being drunk, and this is what happened with Eli. Eli thought that she was shikar, that Chana was drunk. Yes, Ben.
I heard another explanation that he misread the Urim v'Tumim.
Right. So we said that yesterday.
Something about there was a word close to shikora, and he misread it and thought that she's a shikora.
Right. So Isaac brought that up yesterday, which is a nice insight. But you have to understand that Eli obviously was concerned about her. Otherwise, he never would have asked the Urim v'Tumim. He never would have asked the breastplate that he wore. He never would have put a question in front of it of, what's the situation? What's her situation? He must have thought that he might be shikar. And that's why he asked. And when he got that reply, that's when he read it wrong.
Yeah.
But really, otherwise, why would he have asked such a question? I'm sure he didn't go asking every single individual, is this guy okay? Is that person okay? You know what I mean? That's not what you normally do in front of the Urim v'Tumim. So he must have felt that maybe she's shikar. Now,
I heard it in my own synagogue locally. So
right. Okay. Yeah. It's popular, well known. Now the question, the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked a question on this story. He says, if he thought she was shikar, how did he let her continue davening? He should have said, stop where you are. When you think, we just learned in Shulchan Aruch, you're not supposed to daven. If he was so convinced that she was shikar, you should have stopped her. After all, we see he gave her rebuke afterwards. Why did he wait? So on that, and together with a number of other questions as well, how could Eli have made such a mistake, and and so on, and misjudged her? How could he? He's a kohen gadol. Supposed to. It's all about the heart. The kohanim are berusa deliba. They serve Hashem with their heart. How could they have thought so negative about another yid? Misjudged her. So the Rebbe has a talk on this topic, and he mentions that when it says that Eli thought that she was drunk, he thought that she was overly engrossed in her own personal needs, selfish needs. And that's what it means she was drunk. She was just caring about herself. She kairas beloy miyoyin, it says, there's a verse that you could be drunk, but not from wine. You could be like so, totally tied up in your personal needs. Immersed. Thank you.
Yep.
In her selfish self-indulgement, that she totally didn't care about Hashem. She's just thinking about herself and her personal desires. It looked like all she cared about was herself. And on that, Eli was not obligated to stop her when she's not drunk. She's not really drunk that you would have to stop someone. But he rebuked her afterwards and said, how could you be so, you're here before Hashem and you're davening before Hashem. You have to keep in mind that, it's not for your own selfish purposes that you're here. Don't just think about yourself. It's not a Yiddish way to do things. And on this, she answered Eli that it's not that I'm caring for a son for myself. I'm even going to give my son to the Mishkan. I'm going to bring him here, and he's going to serve Hashem all the days of his life. So that was her answer to Eli. But Eli's question, he saw her so distraught, so pained, and it looked like she was just caring about herself. And that's not the idea of davening, even though davening is bakashas tzracha. It's asking for your needs, which is a very a fine line, I guess, of what does that mean? That davening is supposed to be for your needs. And this is a part of the whole discussion that the Rebbe brings is if davening is for your needs, so then this is the appropriate thing. You're supposed to daven for your needs. And the answer is no, not exactly. You're davening for your needs because they're serving Hashem. You're not just supposed to daven, you're not worshiping yourself. You're serving Hashem. You're davening for your needs because your needs are in order to serve Hashem. And the Rebbe brings it in regard to Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is the biggest paradox in itself, because the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is not just being subservient to Hashem like we are when we say Shemona Esrei, but Rosh Hashanah is the whole idea of coronating Hashem. And in Rosh Hashanah davening, we're being judged for everything about that's going to happen in the year. And some of the prayers seem to be asking for our needs. How could you have this paradox of, on the one hand, you're totally nullified on Rosh Hashanah, you're totally given over and coronating Hashem, your whole mind and whole essence is all about serving Hashem. And at the same time, you're asking for your needs for the year. And so the idea is that this is all in order. This is what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that we should elevate the world around us. This is part of our prayer of Rosh Hashanah, is that we should succeed in elevating the entire world and being able that Hashem will be totally coronated, meaning that the whole world will accept God's sovereignty. Even the material items in the world, it'll be revealed that everything is from Hashem and so on. And that is the idea, the concept of prayer. And that's how you can handle this paradox in general of prayer, which is serving Hashem, and at the same time, which is total subservience to Hashem, and at the same time, you're asking for your needs. Yes, Ezra.
So, and then, all right, as part of the Shema Kolenu, normally I say a prayer for people that are sick. So now, how would I phrase that based on what you just said?
So the idea is that everyone, in order to serve Hashem, everyone needs to be well and healthy and strong and be able to serve Hashem. And I want them to be able to fulfill, we all want to fulfill Hashem's mission. They also want to fulfill Hashem's mission, and we want what's best for them. And part of our mitzvah is Avos Yisrael. So we want them to be well, so that because we love them and we want to fulfill your mitzvahs. And we want everyone, every yid should be healthy and be able to serve Hashem. It's all boils down to the serving Hashem the best way possible and the most beautiful and most wonderful ability of serving Hashem. And that's why a person wants to have wealth. It's not for their own bank account that they should have a huge bank account. They should have a big house so that they could invite many guests, and they should be able to serve Hashem and have money to be able to give tzedakah to people who come to their door, not just $18. They should be able to give $18,000, and $180,000 or $18 million. People, we want to be rich, not because we also want to be rich so that we could think better, be able to understand Torah better, because if a person has a chavas hadas, a person has the ability of pleasant way of their mind is able to think good, then you're able to understand Torah. And if you're stuck in a tiny claustrophobic area, very hard to concentrate, very hard to it's going to be limited in your understanding of Torah. So you want to be able to support you want your family to be able to go to have Jewish education and so on, have a Yiddish home and all the necessities in order to serve Hashem. And that's why we want to have the most beautiful shul. We want all of the money. We want to be wealthy so we could make sure that our shul is very beautiful and can welcome everyone. People will feel comfortable there, and so on. So it's all everything that we daven for is in order to serve Hashem in the best way possible. Okay, so the the Gemara continues and it says that Eli said to her, until when are you gonna be drunk? And Rabbi Elazar said, from here we see that when you see your friend that doing something negative, you have to be meichiach. And this is what we were talking about earlier. You have to rebuke him. And Tosfos, I mentioned yesterday, Tosfos over here emphasizes that's not only if they're transgressing a biblical law, even if it's a rabbinic law. Yes, Robert.
I just, it's part of the text here when we talk about, again, a person should always pray in a house possessing windows. Again, and then, with the opportunity of facing Jerusalem. When I'm in shul and I see that there are open windows, the sky or trees, is there ever a consideration that it's sort of a contradiction? We bring ourselves to a synagogue, which is a closed environment, to then commune with God. And yet a lot of synagogues have windows, but they're not large enough, or they don't provide for nature to be part of the ambiance. And so it's sort of an emotional and psychological that don't cut yourself off from nature where God is manifest to pray. And I find it enjoyable to have trees and the sky and clouds and everything there, because it says that I'm one with God versus being in a closed environment or an older kind of synagogue that doesn't have the windows. Is that, am I wrong in, having those feelings and that consideration?
In other words, is it appropriate to have external elements that help you feel comfortable to be able to concentrate on Hashem? Or should you only...
I feel that, I feel claustrophobic inside a building, cutting me off from Hashem, because
Right.
Hashem is nature, is everything. So I always have that when I find myself davening and I look up, above the bima or wherever, and there's windows, and one particular synagogue, I see a tree lines and I see the clouds. And that to me is an extension of what I want to feel in davening. That's, again, my orientation.
King David would constantly speak about things that he was seeing, the sky, the animals, the birds, everything that he would, his Tehillim is all about praising Hashem from this and from that, all the different things that were around going on. So for sure,
I guess, the question is, when our architects design our shuls,
right?
Do they have the understanding that there should be elements of nature, that an extension of the interior of the shul, where the Koron HaKodesh is, that it's all part of this organic experience in prayer?
Listen, there is a Mishnah that does talk about if a person is in the middle of...
Is that a consideration for other people?
Well, this is, number one is this what people want to see when they daven? That's true. Consideration of others, like what are people expecting when they go to shul? Does everyone agree with this? But there is a Mishnah that does say that if a person's in the midst of learning Torah, and he interrupts and he says, how beautiful is this tree? How beautiful is this plowed land? It's considered a sin because he's interrupting his Torah learning. In other words, when you're in the midst of Torah learning, you shouldn't be able to see what's going on around you. So I think that your idea of prayer is when you're about to start praying, you get that feeling of this beautiful view that it's allowing you to really open your mind to Hashem and so on. And then when you get into prayer, you think about Hashem, you don't really...
Right. No, that's exactly
you're looking
it.
around so much.
Right.
But I think it helps.
You're not cut off from nature. Yeah.
But in the beginning of prayer, maybe that would be that would be wonderful. I don't know, in the shul that I'm at, they have by the front windows, I don't know if they had in mind this, but it just turns out that there's a tree with a palm tree with a whole branch of leaves, and it's just by the front window, and even though the window is frosted, you actually see the leaves from it.
Right.
It's a nice thing. I don't know if they had it in mind when they did the landscaping initially of the planning of the shul, but it is nice to see a little greenery. Okay, we got some questions here. Ben.
I don't have a question. I wanted to say it depends what neighborhood the shul is located in. And some, if you put windows, all you'll see is other buildings.
Right, okay.
And the shul has to be tall enough, the ceilings tall enough that they put the windows higher so you don't see the people in the street, you just see the treetops. So some shuls are not high enough either. So, it depends on the location.
Situation. Okay, yes, Avram.
The question on Shimon Israel. How holy relative to the first time we say it is repetition? When we do the repetition, I find that more holy personally than I do when it's initially, when we do it initially. So just purely a personal thing. So what's the relative holiness? I mean, I don't sit down, I daven a sin. What is the relative holiness, if there is a holiness, between the two?
So generally, the way we see that the prayers is a person who knows how to pray. His prayer, the most important part, is his own personal prayer, and the repetition was really initially started. The purpose of it was really to pray, to say the prayer for those who aren't able to recite the prayer. They don't know it. In the olden days, they didn't have prayer books and so on. So that prayer was really meant for those that are unable to pray. That was the repetition. Now, I will tell you, I once heard a vart that when the Chazan repeats the Shemona Esrei, it's a great segula. It's a great type of symbolic for you to receive the blessings that the Chazan says. So, for example, if you have in mind when the Chazan says Hashem who gives us knowledge, if you think of the meaning when he's saying it, your Hashem, it's almost like Hashem is handing you the knowledge right there. And when it says he heals the sick, if you're thinking of it while he's saying it, it's a segula. If you say Amen and you're thinking of it, it's a segula for health. And if you're thinking of all the, parnasa, so when he's saying the blessing, it's almost like Hashem is handing it to you during that blessing. So according to that vart, which definitely makes it much more enjoyable when you listen, because a lot of times you go to shul, you're a little bored when you have the repetition. You really davened already and you've heard it only a million times. But if you think about it that way, it does definitely add some meaning to your davening, that it's like, oh, wow, this is Hashem is handing it to me right when the Chazan is saying it. It gives you a little more enjoyment when you say Amen. So according to that vart, maybe there's more holiness to the repetition. But generally, the way the simple understanding is that the repetition was meant for those that were unable to pray.
Right.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ezra.
So can't you say Beovam Hadat Melech in this particular case in the repetition?
Maybe. Listen, I'm not an expert on holiness, so Ezra has an interesting thought. Maybe it is holier, the repetition, because it's more communal. It somehow unites the congregation. Obviously, when you're in shul with everyone davening alone, it's also considered communal. Don't get me wrong. When everyone davens a Shemona Esrei together, that's also considered communal. But maybe there's some element of holiness to the extra holiness to the repetition, the more communal, everyone's saying Amen. Sounds like a nice thought. Okay.
Rabbi Shlomo, in the dedication of the Beit HaMikdash, he had the entire nation there. And when he blessed Hashem, I mean, the people who were there, so why can't we say that, for example, that when you're listening to the Kedusha and you're answering in the Kedusha, you're doing exactly that.
So that's another thing. The Kedusha, the fact that you're reciting Kedusha, that for sure has a tremendous element of holiness. That you're able to say, that you recite the Kedusha just like the angels. There's no question if that. But I think Avram was talking about the actual repetition, not the Kedusha. Regarding the Kedusha, there's definitely a holiness there. When you're repeating the answering and everyone together is acknowledging the holiness of Hashem and so on. So on that, there's no question that has a great advantage over a person praying individually, even with a minyan, but they don't have the Kedusha. For sure, there's a great advantage. But again, I guess I'm not the right rabbi to ask. Maybe you need someone who specializes in levels of holiness, who can measure.
In the evening, we don't have repetition.
In night, we don't have the repetition, right? Right. Okay. So let's continue. So the Gemara continues and says, Chana answered, and she said, "No, my master." And here she's sort of telling Eli that he lost his Ruach HaKodesh, and the fact that he is suspecting her, and the first version just says Choishtani, you're suspecting me. The second version says you're judging me guilty, and you didn't judge me for the benefit of the doubt, for kapsuchos, innocently. And don't you know that I am pained and I didn't drink wine? Now, the Gemara then says, I think maybe we'll start over here. We're about 10 lines from the top of the page. Amar Rebbe Elazar. Amar is the last word on the line. We're on page 31b. 31b, maybe 8 or 9 lines from the top of the page, the last word on the line, Amar. Amar Rebbe Elazar. Rebbe Elazar says, Mikan, from here, lenechshad b'davar, when a person is suspected of something, she'ein boy, and they don't have that issue, shetzarech lahaidiyai, you need to make it known to the person who suspected you. You should tell them that they were wrong. And I think this is based on a verse, V'hayisem nekiyem me Hashem umi Yisrael, that you should be seen as innocent from Hashem and from the Jewish people. That means that, you could say, well, I don't care if they really think that I did a sin. I know the truth. But really, a person is supposed to try to make sure that other people don't speak Lashon Hara about them. In other words, you're supposed to, there's a benefit, there's a concept of making it clear to the world that you didn't sin. Now, a lot of people take it too far. Even when they sin, they try to hide things and make it clear to the world that they didn't sin. But the idea is that if a person really is innocent, they should tell it to tell the person who's spreading the rumor that they are really innocent. And the Gemara continues and says, don't consider your maidservant as someone who is a base person. That's the verse. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Mikan l'shikr shemes balel ki'ilu oived avodah zarah. From here we see that if a person davens when they're drunk, it's as if they're worshiping avodah zarah. Ksiv hachal lefnei bas blial, because here it uses the word blial, which I translated as base, Uksiv Hasam, and it says over there, Yatzu Anashim B'nei Bliyal Mikir Becha, and it talks about people that go from your midst and they get others to worship Avodah Zarah, to worship idols. So it uses the same term Blial, idols, base. So just like over there, it's talking about idol worship. Here also, when she says that you are suspecting me that I am a base woman, and it means that I'm shikr, I'm davening when I'm drunk, and he uses that word blial, which basically implies that it's similar to the sin of idol worship. Mala halon, just like over there is avodah zara, it refers to idol worship. Afkan avodah zara. Here also, it is considered like idol worship. And so this is it's giving us a powerful statement of how important it is not to daven when a person is drunk, that it's not just considered a sin, but it's considered like idol worship.
Rabbi.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that he's using the word amatecha, which is, I guess, how does one translate your maidservant?
Yeah, like a amma ha'ivriya, similar to the word amma. Amma ha'ivriya, like a Jewish maidservant. So amasecha, your maidservant.
So someone who you consider to be perhaps in the lowest level of the Jewish spectrum, here you are not to give someone of that stature even to someone who is base. All the more so you can't do it to someone who is even much higher. So, I mean, that's what I'm getting from the fact that he's using the word amatecha.
So you're surprised she uses that word amasecha?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm saying that even the lowest person on the scale of I don't know, however you want to call it, character, you shouldn't, if you can't, you shouldn't even give that person to someone who is base. All the more so you shouldn't.
Who said the word amasecha?
Say again?
Who said amasecha? Who's saying this? So I think you're thinking that it's Eli, but it's really Chana. Am I right? Are you thinking that it's Eli who said amasecha?
No, I'm just saying the fact that the person is using that terminology, meaning the lowest person on the, if you want to call it the character scale, should not even be given to someone who is even to a base individual.
So
if it
you're
is,
saying,
if it is,
I think I get what you're saying. What you're saying is amasecha is seemingly even more degrading than blial. Is that what you're thinking? That the word amasecha is even more degrading than blial?
Right. Perhaps.
Okay. So this is the thing. Who's saying it? It's really Chana talking about herself. Chana is the one saying this, and she's just giving she's using a term of humility before Eli, who is now just appointed as Kohen Gadol, and so she's saying your maidservant. I think it's a common term that a person would say when they're before someone of such stature. They would, a woman would say, "I am like your maidservant." There must be other examples. I can't think of one right now, but of people using that term amasecha. Ana avdecha ben amasecha pitachta l'maiseiroi in Tehillim. I am ani avdecha ben amasecha, the son of your maidservant. Right. So you have that. You have the term amasecha, I guess, used. I think you're right. I think it's a type of a term used for humility and just humbling oneself before someone who's great or before Hashem. So I think you're right in the translation, but I think the point is here that she is the one saying it, and that's the proper thing that she would say before the Kohen Gadol. So we've just concluded that if a person is shikr when they daven, it's as if they're worshiping idols. Now, Amar Rabbi Elazar mikan l'shikr. 1 second. Where the next? I just went back by mistake. Amar Rabbi Elazar mikan. No. Vayan. The word vayan.
Eli.
Thank you. Vayan. We're about 15 lines from the top of the page. First word on the line. Vayan Eli. And Eli answered her. Vayomer, and he said, L'chi l'shalom. Go in peace. L'chi l'shalom. Go in peace. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, Mekan l'choyshet es chaveroi b'davar she'ein boi she'tzarech l'paisei. From here we see that if you are choyshet someone, if you suspect someone something that they don't have, that you're obligated to be matthias them. You're obligated to appease them. You have to ask them forgiveness. Not only that, you need to bless them. And Shenemar, as it says, the God of Israel, may he give you your request. And that was what she really needed to get. She needed that bracha. And she got that bracha when Eli suspected her wrong, and he gave her a bracha afterwards. Now, I did not see this brought down in Shulchan Aruch, this obligation of blessing of shetzarech levarchai. I didn't see it. It's not on the side of the Gemara. I don't know if on the bottom. I know the Steinsaltz, the Koran, on the bottom they might have. Do they have a section for like halachic rulings, depth in halacha? Maybe David, are you with us over here? Susan, do you have the Steinsaltz? Does it have anything on the bottom about the halachic, any law regarding this? In other words, is it brought in any halacha svarim?
I have to look. I'll look.
Okay, it would be on. Yeah, I know in the Hebrew. Well, Ben, you have the Hebrew, right, of the Steinsaltz? They have an oirach halacha on the bottom.
I'm looking at the Steinsaltz. Halacha doesn't remind anything about it.
He doesn't mention about it. Yeah.
No, they say asur l'shabbat l'shevet liyad hamitpalel, other things, but not.
Right. That's the next thing. Okay. So fine, very good. So in the meantime, I know I think Ezra had asked me about this. If this is halacha, like do we follow this? And I didn't see it brought in Shulchan Aruch. I guess it's a good.
Wait, and the page before that they say. Okay,
that's the law in Shulchan Aruch. Right. Anyway, I'm not sure if it's brought in any svarim of Shulchan Aruch. I'll have to continue looking.
Are you asking about the shikol or what?
No, more about the choshed b'ksherim. If the obligation to bless, if it's brought in Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah. No, he also talks about the shikor hamifalel.
In other words, I would think it might be in like the laws of tshuva or something. So maybe it might be in a Musar sefer. Maybe it's brought in Sifrei and Sfarim that talk about tshuva and so on. Okay. In any event, we're going to continue, even though we have 5 minutes left. Let's continue. Vatidar neder, and she made yes.
Yeah. Wouldn't this sort of be a reasonable thing? Because when you say something, you create a negative angel, so to speak, and so therefore, in order to balance that out, you need to give a bracha which creates a positive angel to cancel out the negativity or the thing that you've suspected the individual to be.
it sounds good. I just, and the Gemara says that you're supposed to do this. But again, I don't, it sounds good. What you're saying sounds good. I'm not sure if it's like an obligation, or what the reason, if it's not an obligation, what would be a proper atonement, or do you need atonement for suspecting someone? Let's say you didn't say anything, you just thought negative in your mind. Is that a reason also to ask? In other words, to what extent does this apply? Here, Eli verbalized it to Chana. So he was choisher. Not only did he suspect her, but he actually said it to her. So he maybe hurt her feelings and so on. And so here, it seems like he needed to do some type of tshuva. And so he appeased her and he blessed her. My question is, what happens if you didn't verbalize it? Would you also need to do this tshuva? Or if you just had a bad thought about someone, but you didn't cause them any damage, maybe that's not a problem if you didn't verbalize it. Yes, Susan.
Okay, and says in the Steinsaltz, from here the halasha that one who sees in another an unseemly matter, he must reprimand him, is derived. One who sees that another has sinned or is heading in that direction, it's a mitzvah to direct him back to the straight and narrow and inform him that he is hurting himself with this wicked action, even if he did not explicitly violate a Torah prohibition. Rambam Sefer Hamuda, he showed, right.
Okay, that's the only, you don't have anything else there about the law of this. Okay, that's because that we know, that we didn't need. We needed to know about blessing someone if you suspect them wrong. That's what we were looking for. If you suspect someone wrong, should you bless? Are you obligated?
It has a note. It has some notes about drunkenness.
Nope. Okay.
But I do not see anything. Nothing else.
Fine. Okay. Very good. Okay. So that's that's a question that I'd like to look up and see if this applies. If you're, if you just think it, would you need to do tshuva?
If it's a chet, then you need to do tshuva.
So I don't know if it's such, you thought wrong, you misjudged someone.
But isn't that a sin when you make a misjudgment?
But did you say it? Did you tell someone about it? Did you verbalize it to the person himself? Did you just had it in your mind for a moment and then you realized you were wrong? Yeah, I don't know if that's to the extent of.
I don't know if I want to say Eli made a sin,
I mean, I think if a person did that, they should reevaluate. Do they think so negative about others? Should they? I think it's worth them evaluating their health, their mental health.
Okay, but there are some things that are black and white, and that when somebody murders somebody else, there's no question. But what we're talking about is some very fine tuning of the person. In other words,
no.
if I make
Susan,
a wrong
we're talking
judgment,
about, someone did not do anything wrong, but you judged them wrong, and then you realized they did not do anything wrong, but you just misjudged them in your mind.
But you have a responsibility to say, I made a mistake in my mind to that person.
Oh, really?
I
You
would
think so?
Yes.
Some people would be doing that all day long. So I don't know. Anyway, let's do one line. Let's do another line of the Gemara. Vatider neder, and she made a promise. Vatimer, and she said, Hashem tzavakos, Hashem of legions, Master of legions, the God of Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Miyoim shapara hakadosh baruch hu es haylamai. From the day that Hashem created the world, no one ever called Hashem by the name Hashem Tzavakos. Until Chana came, and she called Hashem, she said Hashem Tzavakos. I translated it to mean the God of legions, but it's another name for Hashem. Hashem Tzavakos. So this is she is the first one to use that name for Hashem. Okay, we're going to stop here, and we'll see you later.